Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. Canada Post workers have been ordered to end their strike and be back on the job tomorrow. On Sunday, the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered an end to the work stoppage. The board has ruled that the two sides are at an impasse and unlikely to reach a deal before the new year. Canada Post says it'll take a few days to process trapped mail and parcels. It says customers should expect delays into January. We'll have reaction from all three territories tonight, starting in the Northwest Territories. The CBC's Jocelyn Chappelle tells us how businesses in Yellowknife are preparing for the strike's end.
One of the places in Yellowknife preparing for an influx of mail is Buffalo Airways. Mikey McBrien is the general manager there. He thinks it's better late than never with Christmas around the corner, but knows it'll be busy. He says they are sending a plane down to Edmonton this evening to handle the freight coming in.
So stuff is stuck worldwide, and when that floodgates opens, it's going to be a mess to figure out all the logistics to get everything delivered, especially before Christmas.
A local business that usually relies on Canada Post isn't overly excited about the strike being over. Jordan Crosby is the co-owner of Overlander Sports. He says they had to roll with the punches when it started, but were able to find other shipping options. Ultimately, he hopes for workers to get what they were striking for.
Sometimes small sacrifices for the greater good are necessary. And but hopefully again, they get what they want, if not now, eventually. And because they work hard. I talk to a lot of the Canada Post people daily. I go to Canada Post and they deliver here daily, and I know they're hardworking and good people. So
McBrien says he's chatted with other small business owners. While the prices of other shipping companies was a bit steeper than Canada Post rates, he does think there was a bit of a silver lining.
I think the offset is I hear a lot of people have been shopping local for Christmas, so that's a little bit of a bonus.
Canada Post says they will not be receiving or picking up new product until Thursday, December 19th. They also say the terms of existing collective agreements for postal workers will be extended until May 22nd, 2025. Postal workers will be receiving a retroactive wage increase of 5% from the date of their past agreement's expiry. Jocelyn Chappelle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
In Whitehorse, striking postal workers say they're not happy about being ordered back to work. 55,000 members of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers have been on the picket lines for about a month. And tomorrow, they'll be back on the job without a new agreement.
The opportunity to go back to work and serve our community is something we've wanted from the very start. I don't think anyone's thrilled that the government feels the need to step in and step on our rights when we're just trying to negotiate with our employer a fair agreement for us so that we can live reasonable lives and better serve our community out here.
Clohan says it's disappointing and worries the country is getting used to the federal government stepping in during labor disputes. He says there's been no discussion about whether the union will obey the board's order to go back to work. Meanwhile, in Nunavut, the impacts of the strike are still being felt. During a CBC call-in show, one person said he's happy that the post office will be open again, but stressed the need for an alternative service for urgent mail to be able to get through. Another spoke about how it was difficult to pay bills and receive government checks during the strike. Northern and rural communities rely heavily on Canada Post and were hit hard over the past month. It led to calls from Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami to declare deliveries to the north an essential service. Yukon's power system is strained this winter. That's because a generator is down at the Ajiac Hydro Plant and water levels are low in Ajiac Lake, putting more strain on the system. In the event of a prolonged cold snap or a major utility going down, there may be blackouts. Yukon Energy is preparing for this by bulking up capacity in Faro, Mayo, and Dawson City. They have crews of line workers on duty in case a transmission line goes down. Yukon's energy minister says ratepayers may get higher bills down the road if extra fuel is needed this winter.
So diesels are more expensive than hydro to operate, right? It's the cost of fuel. It just costs more. So yes, there'll be an additional cost, but you know, we're going to get some years where that's the case. Then we're going to get other years where, like if you look at how much renewable we have over time, it moves up and down, and we're trying to add more renewable capacity on all the time. So,
Stryker says if power rates do go up, it won't be this year. The NWT uses about 20,000 tons of wood pellets per year, and the territorial government says they all come from the south. Some MLAs have been talking about what it would take to change that. The CBC's Leanie Lambrink explains.
There are a lot of trees in the Northwest Territories, so why isn't anyone turning them into wood pellets for heating? See these wood pellets here? They help heat the Arctic Energy Alliance's building here in downtown Yellowknife. But like the rest of the pellets used across the territory, they come from the south.
We're reliance on really one cluster of main producers in southern Canada and northern Alberta. So there's a certain risk of supply chain interruptions.
NWT MLAs want to know if we can make local pellets an alternative to burning fossil fuels. They asked that question during a committee meeting last week.
Obviously, it would be preferable to not even have to worry about the shipping aspect of things if we can get supply chains working in communities.
The territory says getting a local supply chain going will be hard. It looked at what it would take to produce pellets in Fort Simpson a few years back. This is what they discovered.
It's very labor intensive and fuel intensive to harvest biomass. So that adds to the cost. So you have to go out and you have to collect your heavy equipment or whatnot to collect the biomass, and then you have to chip it. And then for wood chips, you have to often you have to dry it. So there's energy involved in that. And if you're going to wood pellets, there's another step of you have to dry it more and compress it into pellets.
Transportation and storage in small communities is another challenge, one that the territory says it should be addressing, whether those pellets are made locally or not. The territory says it did a study last year comparing wood pellets and heating fuel in communities along the Mackenzie River. It found that in most of those communities, wood pellets are a cost-effective solution. Leanie Lambrink, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The A&W in Yellowknife is shutting its doors on December 31st. The restaurant has been a staple of the city's downtown for decades. It's also employed temporary foreign workers for years. With the restaurant set to close, the workers' futures in Canada could be in limbo. Carla Ulrich has that story.
The imminent closure of Yellowknife's A&W created a wave of upset through the city last week. After more than 2 decades downtown, the restaurant is a symbol of nostalgia. But for some of the employees, the closure means so much more. Elmer Legman has worked at the A&W since 2021. He came to Yellowknife through the temporary foreign worker program, and he still needs permanent residency, so he must find a new job before his work permit expires late next year, or he risks having to leave the country.
If my work permit expires and I don't get my permanent residency, probably it might happen, but I know the immigration here in Yellowknife, they're doing their best to help.
Legman is already in talks with another employer, so he's confident he'll find a job before the end of the month. And regardless of his current situation, he says he doesn't regret coming to Canada through the program.
Temporary foreign worker program is important especially for those people who are aspiring and dreaming to come to Canada and immigrate. This is a program that can help you build your career, build your future with your family. It's going to help for every aspect of your life in the future. So TFW is, I think, one of the best pathways going to Canada.
Legman says he's going to miss his regular customers, and with all the sad faces coming into the restaurant since the news broke, he hopes a new A&W could pop up in the north again soon. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Yellowknife.
In a stunning move, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. The news comes on the day she was to deliver the government's fall economic statement. As Rafi Boudjikanian reports, it's fired up the opposition and rattled the Liberal government.
From a minister's departure Justin Trudeau knew about,
I've advised the Prime Minister earlier this fall that I will not be seeking re-election as a Member of Parliament for Central Nova during the next campaign.
to another that landed as a bombshell. Chrystia Freeland, instead of delivering a fall economic statement, publishing this letter, where she wrote, "On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. The only viable path is for me to resign." Also saying she and Trudeau have been at odds about the best path forward for Canada, calling out costly political gimmicks the country can ill afford as it faces U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat.
What the I mean, how does the Prime Minister, on the eve of a statement that we've been waiting for months, deep six his finance minister and think that things are going to be normal?
The reviews from some of Trudeau's own caucus no less scathing.
Let's put it this way. Firing a Minister of Finance who has served you extremely well is not what I would call a trustworthy move. And that's all.
Should you resign?
Yes.
I've been a great defender, but I just don't see how we move forward. I think he needs to go, yeah.
Calls echoed by the opposition.
Now is the time for a carbon tax election to turn the decision away from me or Mr. Trudeau.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
While Trudeau hurriedly had veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc sworn into finance,
do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
As other ministers had this to say about Monday's events.
The moment now is for us to focus on the best interest of Canadians. That's what we're doing.
Chrystia Freeland is a good friend, someone I work with very, very closely as president of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport. This news has hit me really hard.
At least 6 Liberal MPs have publicly called on Trudeau to resign today as he meets with his caucus to discuss next steps. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
The fall economic statement was tabled by Government House Leader Karina Gould after Chrystia Freeland's surprise resignation. Ashley Burke has those details.
A media lockup unlike any other. Journalists showed up to view embargoed copies of the government's fall economic statement just as the finance minister set to deliver it stepped down.
From Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, that she in fact is no longer going to be a finance minister and indeed is resigning from the cabinet.
Amid the bombshell news, the very document stayed shrouded under black sheets for almost 4 hours. It was unclear if it would be released at all until early afternoon. We finally got our hands on this document with about 2 hours rather than 6 to parse through nearly 300 pages of macroeconomic forecasts. And this document is one of the reasons for the split between Freeland and the Prime Minister. Freeland wrote, in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats, it was important to keep Canada's fiscal powder dry and avoid costly political gimmicks. The budget includes $1.6 billion for a tax break on holiday essentials. In total, there's more than $24 billion in new spending over the next 6 years. And the government didn't stick to its own self-imposed target to keep the deficit down around $40 billion. It's close to $62 billion for the last fiscal year. This financial expert says it's due to one-time costs from COVID liabilities and Indigenous lawsuits.
We're still seeing a relatively high-spending government that is not necessarily keeping enough powder dry for what could happen between now and the next budget.
That uncertainty trumps administration. The government has a $1.3 billion plan to beef up security at Canada's border to respond. The economic projections include what might happen if Trump introduces some tariffs, but doesn't explore what a full-out trade war would look like. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's provincial and territorial leaders have been meeting, hosted by Ontario Premier Doug Ford. The gathering was called to develop responses to the threat of Donald Trump's trade tariffs, which we've been hearing about. But the sudden resignation of Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland added a new element of uncertainty to the conversations. Olivia Stefanovic has that story.
Seizing the moment to send a message to the U.S. and the federal government.
This is a time for the premiers to step up
which we're going to.
Provincial and territorial leaders gathering together for the first time in person, amid political turbulence on both sides of the border.
And make no mistake about it, we may have our differences, but we're a united group of premiers.
When there's a threat of tariffs, we can't just sit back and roll over. We have to show that we have strength.
Northern premiers say they're on board to take aggressive countermeasures if the U.S. president-elect moves forward with plans to slap 25% tariffs on Canadian goods.
We need to do things like that to ensure that, we get the respect of Donald Trump. If we just roll over, how's he going to respect us?
The incoming Trump administration is threatening steep tariffs unless Canada stops the flow of illegal migrants and hard drugs like fentanyl across the border.
We need to be making those decisions, those investments, and come together collectively as a country on issues without having somebody do it in another country through a tweet.
The Premier of the Yukon says it shouldn't have taken a social media post by Donald Trump for the federal government to address the fentanyl crisis.
We have to give a little pause in the fact that we really need to commit to this now because it's been affecting so many of us across this country for years.
Our priority must be to settle the problem on the border. We still have some people coming at the airport and then moving illegally to United States.
Addressing those concerns hit a major snag today when Chrystia Freeland suddenly resigned from cabinet, a decision she says she made after the Prime Minister told her she would be moving from finance.
I think she had a difficult choice to make, and she made it.
On a day like today, I would hope that Canadians are reassured by looking at this table and seeing that the premiers are unified.
Premiers say they'll continue building on the work they've started here when they travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of the U.S. Congress in the new year. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Alcoholics Anonymous. We're here to help. For more information, visit aa.org and download the Meeting Guide app.
This is CBC North on your smart TV because CBC News is now streaming local. Get local headlines, weather, and community notices, plus newscasts and live programming on your favorite connected device, all for free. It's called the CBC News North streaming channel. You can see your community on your connected TV and mobile devices. CBC News North, your local news streaming channel, is now available.
Earth is our collective home. That makes us all family. As family, we strive to love and protect each other. Diversity of species is our strength. We are all connected. We survive and thrive together. We celebrate many things this season and make many choices. Taking care of our family should be the easiest. We're in this together.
Does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed. It makes sense that they get a larger share. Or does it?
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About that with Andrew Chang.
Being there means being here.
Russian forces, they want it badly.
It's just a fraction of the mess here in Port-aux-Basque.
To witness, to listen, to share.
I'm so sorry. I do worry about them.
Adrian Arsenault reports on CBC News, stream free.
We're often drawn to people who have something we want in ourselves.
But it doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
A new show about small-town living in Inuit Nunangat premieres on January 7th. But the people who helped make it happen in Iqaluit are getting a sneak peek.
Hi, it's Yaya. When people ask where I'm from, I say think of the furthest place north you've ever been. Now keep going.
It's a new series by CBC, APTN, and Netflix, and its world debut is tonight to a sold-out crowd in Iqaluit, where it was also filmed. North of North was created by Nunavut filmmakers Alethea Angnakuk-Baril and Stacey Ugluk McDonald. The story centers around a young Inuk woman going through some very public drama in a very small Arctic town. And it's meant to show an authentic Northern experience told by real Northerners to a global audience.
It's so wild. I keep thinking about it and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be in so many countries. What I hope people worldwide get out of this show, I think sometimes people only understand Inuit as like a historical people. We don't exist anymore. We're something that happened in history and then we all got wiped out or we all froze. It's like, well, no, we've always been here and we've always been so connected to the rest of the world. And, you know, all I want is for people to see Inuit as Inuit, you know, Inuit as people, and that we have so many incredible, funny, exciting stories to tell.
Bringing a show like this to a global audience is something that we couldn't even fathom or dream about in the very beginnings of creating this show. So to be in this place right now feels unbelievable, and we've worked really, really hard for it, so we're very excited.
There's going to be gasping, screaming, shock, laughing. Yeah,
it's not just funny.
It's pretty
threw
crazy.
A little plot twist in there, so we're hoping people love it.
And we hope everywhere across the world people will do good and not share spoilers for people who haven't seen the show.
You can watch North is North on CBC and APTN starting in January, and it'll be launched across the world on Netflix in the spring of 2025. An annual tradition is underway for Yukon bird lovers. The Christmas bird count is celebrating 125 years in Canada. It's a citizen science project that takes place all over North America. Each count is organized by a compiler for a specific location. The local bird club says it can help us better understand the impacts of climate change.
So a warming climate isn't necessarily a good thing for our birds like boreal chickadees, three-toed woodpeckers, even the ravens. These are all birds that make their living during very cold winters. So looking at how those species are doing over time as we have warming winters is important to understand conservation and how those populations are faring with a warming climate.
The count started over the weekend and runs until January 5th. An Ottawa man who was charged twice for checked bags on a recent flight is speaking out. He paid Air Canada and then had to pay United. That's a violation of federal rules. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation into excess baggage fees and why customers keep getting overcharged.
Rob Eadson knew he'd need to bring a lot of stuff on a family trip to San Diego, traveling with his wife and young son.
Like, it looks like we have bags included.
So he paid a higher fare to make sure all 3 Air Canada tickets included 1 bag per person. Their flights were what's called a code share, meaning one airline, in this case Air Canada, sells seats on a flight operated by another carrier, in this case United. But when they checked in, the United agent said Eadson had to ante up for all 3 bags again, even though he had proof he'd already paid.
He just told me that's an Air Canada receipt. It doesn't apply to United, and we would have to pay for bags.
Eadson filed a claim for compensation, but Air Canada refused to reimburse him.
For them to just say, absolutely, stonewall you and say no is really disappointing.
It's also violating federal rules on baggage that say when passengers have a ticket to and from Canada that involves more than one airline, carriers must apply a single set of baggage rules.
It's a question of Air Canada dropping the ball in making sure United knows the conditions of the fare that the passenger was ticketed on for this United Airlines flight.
Air Canada could also be violating the Competition Act, says this UBC prof, selling tickets at one price, then customers get dinged with more fees.
If that information doesn't match their expectation, this constitutes potentially hidden pricing, false advertising, deceptive marketing. Those are all within the same vein.
Eatson says his family enjoyed their trip to San Diego, and after Go Public contacted Air Canada, he got an unexpected refund from United.
Go Public has heard from other Air Canada passengers who were also overcharged for baggage. Air Canada says its policy is to abide by all regulations, and those charges were all in error. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canadians could see some relief when they fill their grocery carts this holiday season. After years of rising food costs, many prices have stabilized. And shoppers could also see a break on one big-ticket dish, the roast turkey. Paula Duhacek explains.
CBC News used federal retail data to look at how much more it costs to make a turkey dinner after 5 years inflation. The bad news, since 2019, many common recipes have gotten more expensive. For example, baking a batch of sugar cookies will cost you 38% more than it did 5 years ago. Cooking mashed potatoes will cost you 31% more. And making a tray of dinner rolls from scratch, that'll be about 29% more. The good news is in the last year, the cost of many ingredients has started to stabilize. The median wage has also gone up about 24% since 2019.
We're seeing some slight relief from where we were a year ago, so things aren't getting worse. It's still more expensive to eat a holiday dinner than it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's the pressure is coming off a little bit as compared to a year ago.
Shoppers could also get a break this year on what, for many people, is the most expensive item on their holiday dinner table, the turkey. Federal data shows that so far, turkey prices are trending down this year. Economists say that could be because there are more turkeys available, and they say demand might also be down as shoppers squeezed by the high cost of living avoid the meat case altogether. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here.
Shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is. Stream anytime. CBC News.
When we work to end inequity, we help start something better. Support even the odds.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.